Tag Heuer recently released a flyback chronograph called Monza. And I think this watch perfectly illustrates everything wrong with Tag Heuer, at least in the eyes of many watch collectors. First, let's talk about the watch itself. It's part of this sort of obscure line of watches called Monza, yes, named after the best F1 track on the grid. Fight me about it, I'm gonna die on this hill. Monza is the best track. This model line originally started back when Heuer was just Heuer, more on that later, in 1976. The watch was released to celebrate Niki Lauda's 1975 World Championship win. Alright, so the watch has a lot of historic value, at least the line of watches has a lot of historic value, and if you look at these older vintage 1970s Heuer chronographs with that Monza name on it, they look awesome. They're one of the most 1970s racing watches that you would imagine because these were the quintessential racing watches of the time, the watches that inspired a lot of other watches in the future, like the watches we see released right now. In 2016, so on the 40th year anniversary of this model, Tag Heuer released a model to celebrate the 40th year anniversary of this watch. That model only ran for a year. It was a limited edition. It wasn't limited to the number of watches, it was just limited to that 1 year. We don't know how many watches were made, probably in thousands somewhere, and these watches could be found online from between $3,000 to $5,000 depending on condition, etc., etc. Note, these watches did not have tag on the dial. They only had Heuer to kind of celebrate and commemorate that original 1976 release. Fast forward to 2023 and we have another Monza addition to this legendary, at this point, lineup of watches. And what do we get? We get this flyback chronograph. At a first look, yeah, this looks actually pretty good, right? I mean, skeletonized dial, it's fairly attractive. It has that Heuer 02 caliber movement, which is very nice flyback chronograph caliber movement. What's wrong with it? I mean, nothing really for a Hublot. This is a Hublot. This is not a Tag Heuer Monza, or more specifically, Heuer Monza. The man to blame for this, I think, is Stefan Bianchi. In 2022, he was appointed the CEO of the watch division for LVMH Group, which includes Tag Heuer, which includes Zenith, which includes Hublot. Basically, what they have learned is that Hublot was successful at a certain point of time with these specific watches. They probably made a ton of money off of Hublots and they wanted to replicate the success. Well, let's make all the other watches look like Hublots. And that's why we got watches like the Phi 21, which actually looks a lot like Hublot. We also got a bunch of other skeletonized Zenith watches that look nothing like Zenith, let's be honest. They all look like Hublots. Watch collectors at that time were like, okay, I mean, this kind of stupid. I mean, they don't look like Zenith watches, but they have nice caliber movements, they have all these complications, and they were pretty attractive watches. Cool. Well, now, fast forward 2023, and now we have Tag Heuer watches starting to look like Hublots. And that is sort of the problem with Tag Heuer right now. They don't have anymore the identity. They don't have that racing heritage anymore. I mean, they still have their racing heritage, but they don't know how to implement it in 2023. Arguably right now, F1 is the most popular it's ever been. And Tag Heuer, or more specifically, Heuer, is so associated, so bound with F1 that it's sort of a shame that they can't really take advantage of that and market themselves properly. Look what Omega is doing with their moon watches. They're killing it. Another problem with it, it's too expensive. Once again, they learned all the wrong lessons from Hublot. They learned that, hey, we have to price watches high to attract people, to attract this hype, because people just want expensive watches for the sake of them being expensive. But that's of course not the case. This watch right here is 13,500 Swiss francs, which is almost 15,000 US dollars. In today's watch market, that's not outrageous money, but it is sort of an outrageous money for a Tag Heuer. A company that's known to be a little fast and loose with their quality control, company that's known to be using some plastic bits on their luxury watches, all of a sudden they want to charge $15,000 for their new watch. So to sum it all up, here's what is ultimately wrong with Tag Heuer in 2023. They are really unfocused. They're trying to bring back some of these iconic lines, some of the watches that made Heuer Heuer without giving enough substance. Listen, if I were to cover a logo on this watch and you didn't know that it was made by Tag Heuer, you would never guess that it's a Tag Heuer watch. You would probably guess maybe it's Zenith, maybe it's a Hublot, maybe it's something else. It just looks like anything else on the market right now. There's ultimately nothing really special about this watch. It looks good, yes, but there's nothing Heuer about it. And that's the problem. Company needs to bring back that iconic image, iconic name, and give collectors something, provide some substance instead of just charging $15,000 for the watch because you want to charge $15,000 for the watch and making it look as generic as possible. And yes, this flyback movement is great, but you can find it on a much cheaper model for around $7,000, the same movement. So ultimately, I don't understand why they're trying to charge so much money for this watch. It's coming off like a cash grab and not even a good one at that. And maybe, just maybe, I'm being a little bit too unfair on Tag Heuer in this video because all watch luxury companies do this. They all charge way too much money for their products. Now, the reason why I'm picking on Tag Heuer here because this model had so much potential. They could have given watch collectors exactly what they were asking for and started to rebuild the trust with the watch collecting community. But instead, they chose to go this weird other way and copy Hublot. But that's just my opinion. Leave your opinion in a comment section below. I'd love to read some of your comments, see where you guys are coming from. Am I right? Am I wrong on this? Leave your opinions. I always enjoy reading your comments. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time. Bye.